Welcome back to Echo Ridge and episode 4 of our Ultimate Beginner's Guide. Today, we are absolutely maybe going to be building a mess table. During the sleepy time, I decided to fast forward it. This is an important point. The game comes default with 3 speeds: slow, medium, and fast. I highly encourage you, during your first few playthroughs, not to get impatient clicking on medium and fast speed, and to stay over here on slow speed. I don't like the fact that they call it slow speed. I think they should call it normal speed, because this is the speed that you should normally be playing at. The faster you're playing, the faster you're going to be able to get your duplicants into trouble and not have enough time to find and solve problems. Paige has finished off our basic research and we've unlocked meal preparation. We now have access to the electric grill, the egg cracker, the mess table, and the farm tile. So we finally have access to the wonderful mess tables. Well, we have 4 duplicants, so let's put down 4 mess tables. We know we want to make it a room, so we're going to put our door in, and now the duplicants can get started on our wonderful mess hall. While the duplicants are working on that, I wanted to highlight the fact that you may have noticed that a bunch of duplicants were working at the research station. This brings up a great point of priorities. When we click on the priority pane, first of all understand that it does not pause the game. So anytime you're in one of those sort of menus, I recommend you pausing it, because you're going to kind of get lost in here. And this is where we're going to have a discussion on errands and priorities. We've touched on the fact that each one of these blueprints is an errand for a duplicant, and all of these errands are slowly added to each duplicant's errand list. If we click on Ari, for instance, you can see right now they're building the mess table. Next, they're going to be building another mess table, just happens to be this one here. I could also queue up a bunch of dig commands, and those will also get added to the duplicant's errand list. Now when we go back to Ari, you can see that they also have 15 more dig commands on the errand list. Also note that they say they're on a 5. When we go into our priorities menu, there is a lot of different type of errands. Right now, they're doing building and digging. And I recommend you highlighting over each one of these type of errands so you can see what is included in each type of errand. Because they are important to know, because duplicants will do all these errands in a left to right sort of fashion. For instance, the duplicant is always going to do all of the building before they do any digging. Likewise, if there was a bunch of cooking errands, the duplicant would do all the cooking before they did the building, and they'd do the building before they did the digging. We can change up that errand list back in our priority menu like we saw a couple of episodes ago. Now when we click on Ari, you can see that they're going to go do that one dig command, then they're going to go build, and then they're going to do the rest of the dig commands. But what if I always wanted Ari to do all the digging, for instance? Well, in our case, Ari is a cook. We put them into grilling, so we're going to want to make sure that they do all the cooking commands first. What we can do is raise the priority for just Ari so that they always prioritize doing cooking first. Notice when I did that, it went from standard priority of 30 to a higher priority of 40. And here's where it all starts to make sense. A cooking priority command for Ari set at a 5 priority is actually going to be an overall priority of 45. Whereas that dig command is only going to be at an overall priority of 35. Because they have a standard priority of digging of 30 plus the 5 here. And the higher the priority, the higher it is going to be on the duplicant's errand list. And here you can see building this mess table has a priority of 35.457. Because Ari's building priority is a 30, the mess table's priority is a 5, and all building errands for Ari are at 0.457. But watch what happens when I raise this mess table right here to say a 7. Now Ari's priority to doing that is a 37.457. We'll reset that and then highlight Catalina. Remember, Catalina likes doing digging and building. Bubbles likes doing ranching and farming, and Pay likes to do researching. And because they like it, we're going to get more morale from it, and because they're getting attribute bonuses for it, they're going to be better at it. So we can set our priorities based based on the competencies of what our dupes can do. So pay, for instance, we're going to raise the priority of doing research. Bubbles, we're going to raise the priority of doing ranching and farming. Ari, we're going to raise the priority of doing cooking. And Catalina, who was our digger and builder, we're going to raise the priority of doing building and digging. Now, no matter what's going on in the colony, Catalina is going to do all the building and all the digging. This is a double-edged sword, though, because remember, there are other things that need to be done. For instance, this outhouse is going to have to be cleaned eventually, and that is a tidying errand. So you either want to make sure that these duplicants aren't too busy to where they'll still get around to do the tidying, or you have a dupe specializing in tidying. Because to highlight that, Catalina is going to keep building and building and building, and then digging and digging and digging, and then after that, they'll go back to the beginning of the errand list until they finally get around to tidying. I know that's a lot of detail on the priority system, but it is a critical aspect of understanding why duplicants do what they do. Look at this! Our mess tables are finally complete, and we're getting a +3 bonus because it's a mess hall. Remember the dig command we set up here? Notice they can't dig this one. And the reason why is it's because it's too far away. If I move the bubbles here, Bubbles is now standing directly underneath it. They still can't reach it. Duplicants can sort of reach 4 tiles high. So in order to dig this tile like we wanted to, we would need to make sure that Bubbles could reach it. And we're going to do that right now by putting a bunch of tiles here. And doing that, we're also going to highlight some other points about duplicant moving. Duplicants can jump over 1 tile. In this case, there was a ladder in the way, so they didn't need to. But if we get rid of these ladders, and this ladder as a matter of fact, because otherwise he'll just walk on top of it, watch what happens now. Ari is able to hop over 1 tile. But if I were to remove this tile here, Ari would not be able to get to the mess hall. Finally, I built 2 tiles here because I wanted to highlight the fact that duplicants can jump up 2 tiles and jump down 2 tiles. It's important to know what your movement restrictions for your duplicants are. That way they don't get stuck to a point where they don't have access to food or the bathrooms. Right now we have a sort of problem. All the duplicants are idle. You don't want idle duplicants. Every once in a while it's okay, but an idle duplicant is a duplicant that is running out of air, food, or water. In fact, if we look at our cavern here, you can see that we don't have a lot of air at all. We're down to about 300 grams. And even the color overlay says it's barely breathable to unbreathable. Lucky for us, we started with a machine called the oxygen diffuser. So we're going to put it right here for a couple of reasons. For one, it's sort of centrally located in our base. But 2, we have existing power here. The oxygen diffuser is going to require 550 grams worth of algae and 120 watts worth of power. For that, we're going to be given 500 grams worth of oxygen. Remember when we spoke that a normal duplicant breathes 100 grams of oxygen per second? So we know this one oxygen diffuser, if it's properly fed power and algae, will be able to support 5 duplicants and all their oxygen needs. And now that it's built and loaded with algae, we can see that the oxygen diffuser is producing a bunch of oxygen. But this highlights the fact that algae is now critically important, isn't it? So let's go ahead and put it on our resource meter. Right now, we only have 79 kilos worth of algae. Well, we just learned that we're using 550 grams per second. And if we multiply that times 600, because remember there's 600 seconds in a cycle, we get a total of 330,000 grams, or 330 kilos. But we only have 80 kilos. Yes, that's a problem. So let's go back to our materials overlay and click organic. And the first thing we see is a bunch of algae. All right, I'm feeling a little bit better. At least we know there is algae around here. So why don't we go ahead and dig down here and start to get some of this algae. Now, when you're digging down, you kind of want to open it up at least 2 wide. And the reason why has to do with what I told you in an earlier episode about carbon dioxide falling. We want enough oxygen to be able to flow into this shaft without it creating too many problems. There's also a common strategy to make new levels every 4 tiles. So we have a level, we dig 4 tiles, and then we have another level. And this way it sort of keeps your colony structured and logically designed. You don't have to fall into that trap. You can make a giant ant colony. Note, by the way, since we zoomed out here, of the increased visibility we now have because the duplicants have been all the way over here. And as we're digging down, the duplicants will know what is down here. But at this level here that we've already pre-planned, we're going to dig all of this out for a couple of reasons. One, there's a whole bunch of breathable oxygen down here, but it also has all of our wonderful algae. Now notice Pei just naturally went and ran on the wheel. Because the battery was getting low, running on the wheel became part of their errand list. Just like refilling the algae diffuser and cleaning out the outhouses is going to be. For this reason, it's normally a good idea to put storage bins next to buildings that have required resources, especially important ones like our oxygen diffuser requiring algae. And now that we have a storage bin here, we can select it, go down through the filtering system to organic, because that's where algae is, and select algae. Because this is not set on sweep only, duplicants are now going to have errands to go grab algae and bring it to the storage bin. If we select a dupe here, you can see that their errand list is starting to get a little longer. For this reason, it's standard practice to lower the priority on the storage bin. In this case, we're going to put it down to a 4, which is basically telling the duplicants, hey, only come load up this storage bin full of algae when you have nothing else to do. And now, when a duplicant is ready to fill the oxygen diffuser, the algae is going to be conveniently located right next to it. In this cavern is also our first experience with a critter, which is just an oxygen not included name for either an insect or an animal. This critter is a shine bug. Shine bugs are interesting because if we click on the light overlay, they're actually producing light. But more importantly, for this stage of the game, there's also a bunch of plants here. 3 bristle blossoms, a buried muckroot, and a mealwood. Well, this is probably about the time, considering we only have 10,000 calories, that we need to start turning our attention to some beginning food. We're going to go ahead and dig up this buried muckroot, because we know the muckroot's going to give us a little bit of calories. But if we look over here to where we've been doing all the digging, you notice we have some mealwood seeds. Why don't we go ahead and put our duplicants on mealwood for a starting food? We're going to go to food. We're going to grab a planter box that requires 100 kilos worth of dirt. And now what? How many do I build? Well, this is going to be a little bit of math, but hold on. We'll get through it nice and easy. Plants have 2 ways of growing, wild or domestically. And what that means is when you find them out here in the wild, they're growing wild. In other words, they don't require any fertilization. If we were to put them inside these planter boxes or farm tiles, the only difference between these being is a duplicant can stand on a farm tile. They can't stand on a planter box. The plant would become domesticated and would require fertilization. This is an important point. Fertilized plants grow 4 times faster. We can see here the wild growth pattern of the mealwood is 12 cycles, whereas the domestic growth, while requiring 10 kilos worth of dirt per cycle, only has a life cycle of 3. If we continue to scroll down on that pane, or if we go into the database on the mealwood, we can see that the end of that growth cycle, we're going to be given 600 calories. Well, if we're going to be given 600 calories at the end of 3 cycles, we can also say that's an average rate of 200 calories per cycle. Okay. Well, remember, we know that duplicants can consume 1,000 calories per cycle. So if domesticated mealwoods provide 200 calories per cycle, we know we need 5 mealwood plants to support 1 duplicant. We have 4 duplicants, which basically means we need 4 times 5 mealwood plants growing in order to make them sustainable. Oh, happy day! Catalina is having an allergic reaction. Well, not happy for Catalina, but happy for us and our learning opportunity. Remember the fact that they had allergies? Also remember the fact that this cavern had a bunch of floral scent? Well, the floral scents were coming from another plant. the bristle blossom. Whenever a bristle blossom is harvested, it produces 1 million floral scents. In other words, they smell nice. Except poor Catalina is allergic, which is increasing their stress by 15% per cycle and giving them sneeziness. We caught Catalina in the middle of a sneeze, and you can see where it sort of went. Some diseases will spread further during sneeziness, as you can see here where Bubbles now has contact with allergic reaction germs, but they don't really care because they're not allergic to it. Later in the game, when we're discussing medicine, we'll be able to make Catalina some allergy medicine to take care of that issue. But for now, whenever those bristle blossoms harvest, it's gonna give Catalina the sneezes. So why don't we do them a favor and dig up the bristle blossom. The bristle blossoms are also a great source of food, except they require water instead of dirt, and they require light. But since Catalina is allergic, we're just gonna dig them up and not worry about them. We have our first planter box row here. I'm gonna hit the copy settings button or the slash and highlight over all 5 of the planter boxes so they plant some more mealwoods. I'm also gonna plant 5 more right here for duplicant number 2, and then I'm gonna go in here and plant 5 more for duplicants number 3 and 4. I like separating the rows of planter boxes as sort of a reminder that this is one duplicant's worth of food and this is another duplicant's worth of food. But notice they can't get in here to these blueprints because, well, they can't reach them. So we're also going to dig this out, which is going to give us more access to copper ore and a bunch more goodies. Additionally, in the mealwoods, something we're going to have to keep an eye on, just like you have to do with all plants, is the body temperature. Mealwoods will only grow in 10 degree to 30 degree temperatures, which brings up our final point for today, and that is the temperature overlay. You always want to keep an eye on this temperature overlay to make sure that there's no problems about to enter your colony. For instance, this biome here is really hot. If we were to start digging into here, some of that heat would transfer from here over here. In fact, even without digging into it, this heat will slowly start to creep in as long as there is a continuant and persistent source of that heat. Otherwise, what's going to happen is the temperature here in this biome is going to sort of mix with the temperature in this biome. Speaking of biomes, it's just a fancy word for an area with similar animals, plant life, and characteristics. In the database, if we type in the word biome, it'll give you a list of every biome in the game. The biome we started in is the sandstone biome. When you click on it, you can get a complete description of everything that is found in that biome, to include all the elements that you need to keep a lookout for, all the plants, and the critters. In an attempt to plant more mealwood seeds for our duplicants, you can see that there's no seeds available, which brings up a good point. It's sort of the reason why we keep trying to expand, because these materials and resources don't last forever. In fact, right now we only have 13 tons of dirt, yet we're using dirt for our mealwoods, and we're using dirt for our outhouses. Well, here's some more dirt, so why don't we just start digging through here? And it's sort of the method behind the madness. Because we're in a sandstone biome, some of these buried objects might have more mealwood seeds. So why don't we dig these up? Because this is our latrine though, we don't want to lose our room bonus, so we're going to put tiles here on the floor, and by doing that, it'll dig this up, revealing what was hidden in there, and also still maintain the latrine status as a room. And by continuously doing all of this digging, we're going to find if there's any more mealwood seeds. Note though, if I tried to dig through this material here, which is granite, it requires hard digging. And we don't have any duplicants with hard digging. We know because we don't see any little crowns on hard digging up here. We do have a crown on grilling because we have one duplicant that knows grilling, and that's Ari. So we're going to dig through this, keeping in mind how big this is going to make the latrine. And at 72 tiles, it's going to be a little bit too big, because remember the maximum size is 64. So why don't we remove enough tiles from the dig to make sure that this room stays 64 tiles. And we're also going to set up some additional dig commands up here, all in the efforts of finding more millwood seeds. We also know that these tiles are going to fall because they're sand, which would create a hole in the ceiling for our latrine and a hole in the floor to our barracks, so we're going to fill those in. We're also going to fill in this buried object here. Over here in this dig command, you can see they're not going to be able to dig much further because they're going to have no way to get over there. So we're also going to put some ladders. If you didn't put ladders here, you'd be running the risk of the duplicant digging all through up here and then finding themselves stuck because they have no way to get down and back over. Something to keep in mind when you're doing these digging commands. We're also going to put a tile here and here to see if they have any of those mealwood seeds. We can also dig up this one mealwood here because whenever you dig up a plant, you're given a seed. Just like when we dug up the bristle blossoms, it gave us blossom seeds. And after a little bit of digging, we've now filled up all of our planter boxes with mealwood. So we're sort of sustainable for a little while. We have enough food, at least until the 31 tons of dirt runs out. We have water for our bathrooms, and it looks like we have 10 tons of algae for our oxygen diffuser. Note that I needed to end up digging all the way through here to look for more seeds, so I put some doors here to make sure we were still able to maintain our barracks and our latrine. But you could literally walk away. Until they ran out of algae or dirt, this colony would just keep operating on its own. Eventually, we'd have to start looking for more dirt or for another source of oxygen because those resources will run out. Also notice that all the carbon dioxide that our colony is producing is sort of falling down in here because carbon dioxide is not breathable. So you need some place for it to go. This is a good place for it, as is this, because the duplicants aren't really working down there. So here's my challenge to all you newer players. We have spent a few episodes getting to this point where the colony is sustainable. Granted, it's not infinitely sustainable because of those resources that we'd run out of, but I challenge you to start a new colony, get it to this point, and then start another colony, and do it again, and do it again. Because you're going to learn so much about navigating the different little areas and getting set up for the very first time. It'll allow you to stop and smell the flowers. Too soon, Catalina? Too soon? I hope you're enjoying this series just as much as I am enjoying creating it. Look forward to the next episode where we're going to start getting into some more advanced research and expanding our colony even more. Until next time, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.